If I asked you, what Apple, Chick-fil-A, and Ritz-Carlton all have in common, what would you say? You'd probably say customer experience, and you'd be right. One of the things that's often overlooked in business is how to drive business growth while creating exceptional customer experience. If you ask me, I'd say it's actually those experiences that make the customer stick around and that build great businesses. Today's guest, Chris Tazewell, is a seasoned program manager in customer success with over 7 years of experiences in sales, solution delivery, and portfolio management. A 4 times President Club Award winner and a thought leader in leveraging AI for customer success, Chris is passionate about developing emerging leaders and fostering inclusive work environments. We're excited to dive deep into customer success, diversity in sales, and the power of AI. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Appreciate it, Joanne. Thanks for having me.
So, one of the things that I always ask, when we get this started is why did you choose a career in tech?
Honestly, I didn't start my career in tech. I started just in sales. I was actually started my role when I graduated. I started actually working in a contact center. When I graduated college, it was literally two things I said I never would do is work in sales and work in a call center. And lo and behold, 6 months post grad, I'm in a call center. I was a sales development rep for about 10 months. Got promoted and started managing the team pretty early. And so that was kind of my entry point into tech in a sense, but it was more so because I was actually managing our CRM implementation, a few other things, while wearing a couple different hats. And so went through a layoff during COVID. And what really made me jump into tech was just understanding there's so much opportunity here to be able to do the same things that I wanted to do. And so I ended up stumbling across customer success. I was looking at some job descriptions and I was like, I knew I didn't want to do sales. The quota, it can be a cyclical process. Like it just felt like every month you start over. And so customer success was like the opportunity to be able to do, work with customers, solve problems without, I guess the pressure of having, a quota per se. And then I actually took a little bit of a step back. It's actually an interesting journey I've had. I actually went to go be an intern um, at the company that I've been at recently, Genesis. And so I actually jumped into customer success as an intern for 3 months and then took on a full-time role as a mid-market customer success manager. And so what really kind of helped was me just being able to have familiarity with contact center solutions and having worked in a contact center and just knowing like my older brother, he's like on the more technical side, like network disaster recovery. My mom worked in IT, so I've always been around technology. I just never been necessarily the technical person, so just trying to figure out what was my opportunity and where was like my fit in the big tech landscape, not necessarily being a technical person.
I think you touched on like very many interesting themes there that I want to almost unpack, right? So I think the
Mhm.
first is like the theme of like never say never, right?
Sure.
Uh, because, and I've seen this happen with so many people, even in my own journey, is that while your natural like instincts to not necessarily want to do something might be right because maybe
Mhm.
that's not right for you, I think sometimes you might need to take that detour to get to where you need to be. But
100%.
also, you touched on something very important. Like as someone who's already experienced in your career, taking that step back to go do an internship,
Yeah.
right? Charging into the game just to get to where you need to be.
Mhm.
Talk me through like how that journey worked out for you or how you think about things like that because we live in a world where everything is like you watch a video off of wherever you watch a video. Oh, I just did this and I make 250,000 now, and
Yeah.
everybody anchors their reality off of that. So those two things, how does it shape your mindset not to kind of like go with the herd mentality?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I think my saving grace is not having a lot of ego. Like I'm a pretty humble person in that regard, and so I never, think I'm too good for any type of role. It definitely was a bit of a mindset shift, like taking on an internship opportunity. But I really just told myself like all I need is the opportunity to get my foot in the door. Like for a lot of people, they know getting in tech is difficult. Like I mean, even now, like all the layoffs, there's a lot of roles that are open, but there's even more people that are on the market and more people trying to break in and get an opportunity. So I'm like, if I just get a chance to just showcase what I can do, I know I'm gonna knock it out of the park. And so that's really the mentality I had. I wasn't gonna take no for an answer. Um, and so not necessarily knowing, I wasn't hearing back from a lot of the jobs that I was applying to originally, and just again needing an opportunity to kind of step in. And I didn't take it lightly at all. I mean, as an intern, like I was fully ingrained. Like I had full benefits. It was a very unique situation, but I mean, I was going in full speed ahead. Like I was setting up calls. My first 3 months, I set up calls with all types of people in the organization just to make sure like I fully ingrained myself and understand the product. I'm talking to VPs, directors, and just treating myself like I'm a full-time employee and acting like I am before I actually am. And it ended up turning out to be a great opportunity for me. Um, I'll actually be riding out my time here at that company coming up soon. But 3.5 years, it was amazing just kind of going through that process. And honestly, even though I took an internship, I ended up doubling my salary during COVID. Um,
Mm.
so sometimes you do have to take a step back, and it's the opportunity that you don't realize might be like that next thing for you. Like you said, never say never. Just I'm still young. Just try stuff, take risks, and so I knew I just had the flexibility. I was going to figure it out along the way, and I mean, push came to shove. If the internship didn't work out, I'm sure I was going to figure out some other way to land on my feet. So, just maximizing the moment while I had it. Honestly.
Mm. That's so important, and I want to double click on that because it's so interesting that a director and I were actually chatting today, and it kind of like we spoke along these threads, right?
Mhm.
Around all he's kind of like always looking for black engineers, right?
Yeah.
But they're not always easy to find, and
Mhm.
we're troubleshooting to see like why is that? Because again, from his perspective, is that we've not done enough work to even make tech as sexy as it should be, right?
Mhm.
But I take a different approach. It's like there's people getting shirts every day. There's people
For sure.
getting all of these things every day. But I feel like the knowledge is not filtering properly, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot of people want to. They see the story. I took a 6 month course and now I'm making six figures, right?
Yeah.
It's the sexy, beautiful story,
Mhm.
but it's not always like that. And
Not at
I've
all.
realized that, of course, becoming an engineer is not an easy journey,
Mhm.
but it's a rewarding journey. And like, because it's harder to do, many more people find opportunities if they get really good at it, right?
Mhm.
Than people, because it's easy to be a product manager. It's easy to become a customer success person because you can already leverage your soft and
Yeah.
pre-existing skills. With more technical things, while you can bring those skills along,
Mhm.
but you still have to know how
Yeah.
to write that syntax, right?
For sure.
So, but I think you still touch on something that's very key, right? It's this idea of being willing to do the work,
Mm.
right? Being not being shy to go a level down to basically take 2, 3 steps forward. But I think something else that you touched there that's super important that I want you to expand on is having the mind that you belong there. Because
Yeah.
again, for many people who come from our community, we don't exist in those spaces by default. So there's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes with
Mhm.
it. And I'm imagine that you're not saying that you didn't face that. You're just saying you still figured a way to deal with it and still show up the way you need to show up. So what helped you do that?
Um, that's a good question. Honestly, it going into tech, it was like the transformation for me. Like, I was actually listening to Bobby, and he was talking about like he's always confident, heading into rooms. I wasn't. I used to be an introvert. The imposter syndrome was a thing. Around that time that I was making the transition, I started to lean into just trying difficult things. It's actually a book that I read that like literally it was like a light switch for me. It was Think Again by Adam Grant. And he introduced this
That's
concept
a good
of
one.
one of my favorite books. And it introduced this concept of confident humility. So being confident enough that you're going to find a way to figure it out, but humble enough in the path that how you get there, it might change. And so
Mm,
understanding, like, I was managing a team at 22. Like, for a lot of people, that's the highlight of their career. And, for some of them, they'll do that for the rest of their life. And then I knew, like, that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. And so stepping into a new space with tech, just understanding, like, I have the skill sets, the soft skills, to be able to figure it out. If not, like, I'll ask questions. Like, when I started as a CSM, literally figured out a way to make myself stand out at my organization was I didn't know what to do. So I went out and found community outside of my organization. So I was literally 3 times a week, I'm joining different communities. There was like Gang Grow Retain and things on YouTube, and watching individuals talk about like different customer success practices. A lot of stuff that wasn't happening at my organization. So I'm coming in, even though I haven't been a CSM that long, I have the skill set, the ability, but I'm bringing in stuff that is tried and true because it's working at other organizations, and I bring it into my organization. Now I look like a thought leader, even though I'm really just going out there asking questions so I can make myself feel more confident. And so for me, like, the imposter syndrome, honestly, it's a balancing act. Like, you never want it to like cripple you. Like, they always talk about like fear. Like, fear doesn't go away for a lot of people. Like, I do public speaking all the time. Like, I still get anxious. I still do breathing exercises, all that type of things before I hit the stage, but it's like doing it scared, doing it fearful. And so kind of stepping into the role, just even if you have the imposter syndrome, like, use it as fuel. So I just kind of shifted my perspective that, if I'm anxious about something, like, it's keeping me on my toes, my adrenaline's pumping, I'm in the zone, like, let me focus up. And if I feel like people are better than me, like, work harder. Like, I'm really like a no nonsense guy, like, former athlete. Like, if somebody's better than me, like, I'm gonna find a way to beat them. It doesn't matter if they had a head start. It doesn't matter if they went to whatever school. Like, I'm gonna find a way to get ahead. And so it's like focusing on those smaller details, and just being open to looking outside the box. Honestly,
mm. That is so dope. And you touched on something that I think is very important. I had a super viral tweet last year, right,
Mhm.
about just how much it is that we as a community tend to invest in sports and things like that, but
For
not
sure.
enough in things like tech. And
Mhm.
my contrast of that was like the upside, like if the NBA has like 100, plus superstars, right?
Yeah.
If you're like let's say we put these kids on a ranking and you're number
Mhm.
300 that year, that in a specific year, you don't have a career.
Yeah.
If you're number 300 software engineer, in fact, if you're number 3,000 software engineer, you be eating good,
You're making some good money.
So in my mind, it's like that was the whole tweet.
Yeah.
But I speaking to Bobby, speaking to you, speaking to another gentleman who played college sports,
Yeah.
I realized that it's not a disadvantage.
Not at all. Yeah.
At least not at least if it doesn't exist in its own realm. If we
Mhm.
build it into all the other things, I think there's a mindset, there's a spirit that comes with it.
Mhm.
And whether it's like you being completely fearless or like you being fearful but still figuring out that
Yeah.
mindset of you know I'm gonna do it regardless. And I think it's a very key mindset because I've seen, I was even watching a documentary of a soccer player who was saying he was looking around at like 14 and it's like I'm not as good as that guy, I'm not as good as that guy.
Mhm.
But he's like, what can I do? I'm gonna keep working. And then he realized that as he started to grow up, he got better and
Mhm.
got better than them, right? But it's almost like not counting yourself out. So how would you say like sports, what role would you say sports played in your career development?
I mean, it was life development, honestly, for me. Um, just hardships, like dealing with difficult tasks, like nothing was too big, for me to be able to handle. Like, I, I never was the biggest, fastest, strongest. Like there's always going to be someone bigger. Like I'm 5'9", 220. Like I'm solid, but it's like depending on what position, like there can be someone faster than you, stronger than you, or whatever have you. And honestly, for me, like it was just self reflection. Like it's hard. Nate Robinson, one of my favorite basketball players, he always talks about heart over height, and it's talking about like the grit, the mentality, the mindset that you have can outperform talent. And so
Mm,
at an early age, like I learned like I need to figure out a way to get a competitive edge. Like if I'm not the fastest, like, okay, let me be stronger than this person. If I'm not stronger, let me be quicker. So I was just this unique blend of I guess a jack of all trades. Um and kind of to the point of what you were talking about, like with sports, there's the statistics make sense. Like the numbers, like the percentages, they add up. Like I mean, quite frankly, I never want to shoot anybody's dreams down. Even if you go to the league, even if you turn out to be LeBron, and there's only been one LeBron in the entire NBA history, LeBron's about to retire at 38. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Like there's still so many other things that you can do, and I just realized that early on in my career. Um, Football for me was like I took it as leadership opportunities. It was my first opportunity to really kind of develop as a leader, team captain. And it really helped me kind of develop my leadership style. I was more of a servant leader. So like I was not
mm,
a person that I'm just gonna yell at people and I'm sitting in the back and I'm chilling. Like I'm gonna be the first one on the line when we're running sprints. When we finish
mm,
practice, like I'm gonna go and we're gonna go do extra sprints. Like even though I knew I wasn't, I mean, I had some opportunities maybe to go like D2, low D1, walk on. Like this wasn't the end all be all, but still, like for me, it's maximizing the moment. Like even though I might not go to the NFL or go to college, like still in this moment, like I'm learning stuff. And so like now as
mm.
I have led teams and in my career, like in sales, like I consider sales like the same thing as a competitive like athletic field. Like you're closing deals, you're working through so many different challenges and problems, and you need to figure out ways to get through the obstacles. And like for me now, that's my new field. Like for me, like a couple years ago, like I coined the phrase like I'm a corporate athlete now. Like it's kind of been my like focus as a speaker as well. Is like it's the same thing. It's literally no difference. Like those same skill sets that you have, like can translate to business, can translate to any of those things that we do. And so that's just kind of the mentality I've been leaning into is just embracing that corporate athlete. And I just got a new field now.
I really like that. Shout out CJ the runner. Really great to be getting to you out there on Twitter. And to everyone joining us from everywhere, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, we're having an amazing conversation with Chris about his journey in program management, customer success as an athlete,
Mhm.
and how he's tying all that together. And again, once again, this is working in tech. The goal here is to share this, unique, exciting journeys in tech, breaking it down, beyond the, razzle dazzle that you see, but real career stories about,
Yeah.
how people make it. And the goal ultimately is to help, many of you out there who are also figuring out, how to take the next step in your journey. So my next question to you is, one of the things that I see a lot from people who come on this, podcast is just how important networking has been for them. Has that been your experience as well
A
in
hundred
tech?
percent. 100%. Networking is everything at this point. Like I said, I'm going to be transitioning into a new role soon. That's through networking. That's through some previous relationships that I had with old colleagues and just keeping those connections up. It's the reason why I've been able to be on different podcasts and different things. And honestly, even for me to even be successful in my career, like it's the network that I built. Um, I could go through plenty of stories. Like, for example, I was just chatting with one of my mentors at work. When I went to be a CSM, my first QBR, for those that don't know, is a quarterly business review where you meet with the client, which was a Fortune 500 client. I wasn't even supposed to be actually leading this. The lady I was shadowing, she was about to go on maternity leave, and so she was supposed to do the QBR, and then she was gonna leave like 2 weeks later. Her baby ended up coming early. I had to lead this QBR. I'm maybe like a month and a half in, like have no idea what's going on, and like literally so many things happen. But I ended up making a friend early on, and so I was like, "Hey, like, can you come sit in and shadow me on this QBR?" Like, I'm supposed to have a whole team with me, and it ended up being just me and this guy. Like, luckily, I actually asked him to get on this call, but it's literally me and him in front of 20 execs from this organization, and so networking allowed me to be able. He provided me some support while I'm going through the process. He gave me some feedback, and then as well, like if I was stumbling on anything or if there was some questions that I might not know, like he jumped in and helped me out, and I got through my first QBR, and then I think that's what gave me the confidence to like really just keep going. So
Mhm.
it's so many people around that have like shared some knowledge, whether it's about the product, whether it's about a different way to do things in customer success. It's it's how you really, kind of, I guess, get to the next level. Like you can do a lot of jobs. Like a lot of people are applying to companies right now, and like you're just a number until you can have
Mhm.
that you've networked with that knows your ability, knows your skill set, that can kind of pull you out of the shuffle. Um, like for me, my goal is to never have to apply to a job after this. Like I want it to be that my
Mhm.
network reaches out to me for opportunities because they know my abilities, they know my skill set. I don't like the job search process, but yeah, I think community, network, like it's everything. Like nobody, I don't believe in being self-made. Like it's never going to be just you getting there. Like you never know who might be able to be in a room to say your name to put you in for a stretch project. That's happened.
Mhm.
Whether it's a mentor to just be able to give you some experience and knowledge. Like there's so many different avenues where like people are able to pour into you, and it's just going to help you exponentially like in your career.
Mhm.
But
So if go ahead, sorry.
I would say, but for networking, I think a lot of people focus more on what they can take out of it. Um,
Mhm.
for me, like networking, mentoring, like that whole process is a two-way street. Like even though I'm
Mhm.
talking to someone who might be a senior executive, there's still a perspective I'm able to provide to them. And so I think not a lot of people talk about like, what is the value I can provide this person? Like some people will do things and a lot of people will do it just for the benefit of they just want to share back with people, but it helps you build social capital when you're sharing with them and you're giving them a different perspective, even if you're younger, have less experience or whatever have you. There's something that you're able to help provide to them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such an important piece that I think a lot of people gloss over. I think even to maybe drive it further, and I'm curious to hear the take on this, is someone said that real networking is being in the trenches with someone.
For
Like
sure.
real networking is someone who can vouch for you. I mean, it's nice to go to all these events and meet people and do all of that, but the best people who are going to be in your corner are going to be people who've done things with you. And it's funny, like Kelsey on the podcast said something about like, again, gave an example, like, he goes to a job and they say, how much is he asking for? I said, he's asking for 150. It's like, do we
Mhm.
already have him? Like, pay him 175, right? Like, people being able to speak for you in that way, I think is important. So, yes, definitely build the relationships, give value, but how important is even like being someone who's delivered results for people, building as a part of building that network?
I mean, it's critical. It's actually something that I talked about before on a different platform. It's like I call it the three levels of branding. And so, like, what a lot of people do is the first two. They focus on, you know, people know me. They did the business cards. They go to networking events, and I have somebody's LinkedIn, so they know of me. And then the second level, they might actually know me. So the first level is like I know this person, like I know Bobby, or I know Jawan, but they don't actually know who I am. The second level is Jawan actually knows who I am, he knows that I went to the Blacks in Tech networking event. But like the third level where a lot of people don't really dig into is like, what do people know me for? That's like the
Mm.
biggest thing for me. Like I learned that honestly in college, like through trial and error. Um, I'd actually graduated, and like, for a lot of people, they'd be like, "Oh, I was a star student." Like I had great grades in high school. I had way too much freedom in college, and so my grades weren't the best, and like I wasn't applying myself like I needed to. And so it's funny. I was sitting in my apartment one day, and I'm like looking for a job, and I'm like, what would somebody say about me? And they would probably say like I was just a funny guy. I'm a really nice person. Like that's not going to get you a job. And so like after that point, it made me start really like redefining like what is my brand? Like what do people know me for? And so now like people know me for business. They know me for tech. They know me for a lot of the speaking and engagements and things that I do. And it's like really making sure that, if people do know you, like what do they know you for? Like where did they meet you? Like what have you shared with them about yourself, and like what do you do? um that's like the part of networking that really matters. And then like when you really talk about like being in the trenches is, you know is this person like comfortable vouching for you? Like a lot of people reach out on, I might have had a conversation with you, and there's a lot of people you have conversations with, but can I speak confidently to like, again, like what is your quality of your work? Like what have you done? And again, going back to the theme of like maximizing the moment, like you never know what that moment is, like until it's already passed. Like I've
Mm.
get stretch projects, and I literally get the stretch project because I remember I got voluntold to create a SharePoint page for our Black Employee Resource Group at work. Made that, and I put my all into it. I networked, I made some connections. Like I'm literally finishing out my 2 years as being the co-president of the Black Employee Resource Group now, just from being voluntold to build a SharePoint page.
Mm. Mm.
Never would have known that that was gonna, kind of translate into that. And it's gave me opportunities to now meet with our C-suite executives at the organization, and like literally just maximizing the moment. Like you never know who knows who, and like how some of these relationships are going to kind of grow and flourish. And so like you treat everyone like you would, like they all matter. Like you always talk about like treat the
Mm.
janitor the same way you would treat the CEO. Like it doesn't matter what somebody's
Mm.
role is. Like if you have an opportunity to help them, to provide value, provide feedback, like do it. Like not
Mm.
necessarily because you're going to receive something, but I think the best thing is to be able to give. And maybe at the end of the the end of the road or later down the road, they might give back to you, but a lot of it is just pouring out and providing value whenever you get a chance.
It's so powerful that you said that piece about, go being voluntold to do a slide, and then that transitioning into you being having this opportunity. I literally had another conversation with a leader yesterday that was around the same thing. It's like when he joined the company,
Mhm.
it felt like he had to do any and everything. And then he joined all these groups, try to provide value, and he realized that he wasn't doing anything. In
Mhm.
fact, of course, he didn't say to this point, but I would imagine that, imagine you join a group and you're supposed to deliver on something and you don't, and you do that in multiple places.
Yeah,
It actually hurts your brand more than
absolutely.
if you had not done anything, because now everybody knows you as like, you want something done, forget about that guy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
That's the brand that
it's
you've built.
it's a real balancing act. Like it for me, for people early in their career, people trying to break in, I always tell people like just say yes to things. Like you never know how it's gonna be. Like I literally my first job, like I was making $35,000 in DC. Like I
Mm.
literally uprooted my entire life and moved to DC in 2 weeks, lived in a hotel for 3 weeks, and like I'm just gonna figure it out. But after you get time to like put in the work and do the things and build the skill sets, then it gives you the opportunity to have flexibility where like, yeah, there's plenty of people that reach out to me on LinkedIn about job opportunities, and I'm turning them down because I have the ability now to be able to say no. I've gone through the trenches, I've done the legwork, like I've done the difficult tasks. Like I think a lot of people try to overlook it. Like you see the glitz and the glamour, like you said, on Instagram and Twitter and all the things where it's like I went from $25,000 to like 150,000, and It's possible, like, but they don't tell you like, oh, it actually took 15 years and like I was working really hard and like then it switched like on the 14th year.
Yeah.
I'm never
Because
really
that's not a sexy story. That's not a
yeah, it's
sexy
not.
story to tell.
It's not at all, but it's for a lot of people focus on being I think they focus on being the outlier or the exception. And like realistically, like, there's a path to get there. Like it's just people want to skip steps. And
Yep.
it's a guy I know. He's a basketball coach here where I'm from, and he always talks about take the stairs. And like
Mm.
you got to do that. Like you got to work through the steps and the processes to understand because you're gonna get down the road and like you skip some of the bumps and bruises that you were supposed to have, and then like you're not adequately prepared and empowered for what you need to handle like later down the road.
And if I could stretch that analogy, because I love analogies, right?
Mhm.
If you take the steps, if you take the stairs, if the elevator doesn't work, you can find your way back. The
Exactly.
challenge is like, and there's so many things to see, right? On the way there. I think a lot of people want to take the elevator, but forget that that gets crowded easily. It can break down. Like there's so many things in
Mhm.
that process that may not work out. You might realize that that floor you're trying to go to is not even where you really want to be. But if you
Yeah.
don't let yourself experience that journey, how do you know? And it's
Yeah.
funny, like goes back to your story. I don't want to work in sales. I don't want to work in a call center. And then, and that's the thing. It's like I would imagine like working in a call center where you've had your pick
Yeah.
of different types of customer. I
Mhm.
think that enriches your experience to become a customer success
For sure.
manager. So ultimately, you actually end up not doing the things that you say you don't want to
Mhm.
do, but you had to take a path there to where, like, if you went to customer success without any of those experiences, would you have ended up in the same spot?
Definitely not in the trajectory that I am. Like
Hey.
it's literally it's the culmination of all the like the odd jobs. Like it's funny you had mentioned Chick-fil-A in the opening. Like Chick-fil-A was literally my first job. Like when I was actually doing
Mm.
my interview with customer success, I literally said I was like, honestly, like I feel like I've been doing customer success my whole life. Like Chick-fil-A was my introduction to creating a personalized experience. And so like now my
Mm.
bar is set super high because like I have to say my pleasure. Like I still say it and I'm like I'm almost 20 years removed from it. I'm still saying my pleasure, and it's ingrained in me just being able to provide value, being able to focus on the experience that I'm giving. And so like literally we talk about like sports, we talk about like the little things that we did. It's the details that make the difference.
Mm. Mm.
And to you learn I mean you learn more from, the losses, the bumps, the bruises along the way than you do from any of the successes.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Success is always a lousy teacher. So if we bring it back in terms of like customer success itself,
Yeah.
what are the top three skills that you feel that someone must have if they're going to succeed in that role?
Whew. Communication. Communication is critical because you're working with so many different parties, both internally and externally. Uh, Problem solving skills. For me, as a CSM, all I consider myself as a dedicated problem solver. Like if there's a problem, I'm a Swiss Army knife. Like, there's so much gray area where I might be dealing with stuff that's not necessarily in my immediate purview, but like I still need to figure out how to solve the problem. So if they're having billing issues, platform outages, like I need to make sure I'm pulling in the right resources to be able to kind of clear the roadway. Um, and then I would say just
Mm.
vision to be able to see like the long-term path, like being able to create a long-term path. I think it pairs very well with the communication, being able to see where your customer is at and understand, like a lot of people are like, obviously we need to drive adoption, and they're like, okay, well, they're telling me drive adoption, I'm just going to push these new features and widgets on them like right now. But like having the vision and understanding that they might not be ready for it, like that's not the phase they're in. And so making sure that you work on the phase that your customer is in and then allow them to kind of communicate with them what the roadmap looks like. Like what does the walk, run, fly process look like? Like, we're in this phase, we're going to spend 3 months here and then spend, another 2 months here, in this like walking phase, and then we're off to the races. And they can be one of your biggest customers. But I think a lot of people rush that process.
Hmm. I think you unlock something that's so interesting. So one of my really good friends, who's a sales engineer, he
Mm-hmm.
said something similar about two things. He's like, when he went into this role, he thought like the goal was sell, sell, sell,
Yeah.
but that he's realized two things. One, if the solution isn't right for a customer, he
Mm-hmm.
wants to end that relationship very early.
Yeah.
It's going to save their time. It's going to save his time. It's going to save his company's time. And ultimately, being upfront that way means that if ever that customer needed him or needed that
Mm-hmm.
service, them being very prudent with their time gives them an advantage. That's
Yeah.
one. But second of all was the fact that not trying to oversell a customer.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, like if you have a suite of products, you want to try to sell as many of those as possible.
Yeah.
And like he steps in to always to say things like, you know what, I don't think this is going to be a right fit. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's basically this thing that you talk about vision. It's like we can try to sell this extra add-on this year
Mm-hmm.
that when the customer looks at their contract next year and say, we just added at an extra $500,000 whatever this thing
Mm-hmm.
that's not provide any value, the $2 million contract is also at risk
Mm-hmm.
now because you've created this general sense of them being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's okay for you to say, you know what? If you have XYZ that fits this, then this will be great for you. But if it's not, I would advise you in this moment not to do this, but we can give you a free trial to be able to do XYZ use cases. And if it works out, then we can expand it. He's like, he's found so much success and he's built so many good relationships by
Yeah.
being the person who just doesn't want to sell more, 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 but thinking about what provides the most value. And it's like, it's always worked to where when he does that, customers are always looking to buy more. So it almost works in reverse.
It does, yeah. Seriously, no, honestly, like you're spot on, because it's like, as a customer success manager, like you really want to focus on being a trusted advisor. Like, you're not a salesperson per se. Like, there's a sales aspect to it, but like for me, like I never felt like I sold. Like, literally, I was in my role 3.5 years. I was talking with my manager, and she told me, like, you never were below 155% net revenue retention. So like, that's
Mhm.
upsells, expansions. Like, they're just expecting you to be at 100%. I was at 155% over 3 years at minimum. Like, sometimes it was
Mhm.
higher than that. Um, but it's just the fact that, like, again, I'm a dedicated problem solver. So like for me, my introduction to the customer, I'm telling them straight up, I'm like, hey, I'm not here to sell you. Like, my goal is, think of me as a XYZ employee with my company badge. So I'm your entrance and opportunity into what's going on inside the organization. Like, what are the new bells and whistles, the features that are happening. And so like, I need you to be as open as you can with me, not necessarily because I'm trying to be in your business or anything. The more I know, the more I'm able to help you. So the more that I know that there's problem solving or problems that need to be solved, or even things that they might not think are relevant to what our product does, like, I really just make sure that there's an open door of communication so they can tell me, like, hey, if stuff is happening outside of my purview and they're having issues with funding with another vendor or something like that, it at least gives me knowledge and understanding, like, hey, like, don't push on trying to sell them on this right now because they're in this rut. So if I give them some opportunity to kind of talk through, dealing with that situation, or maybe even I'm able to provide some value there, then, once we do have an opportunity and opening, it's a much easier process to kind of get them bought onto the new product, the new features, or whatever have you. Um, so it's really just understanding your customer and understanding the business to be able to, again, just solve problems. Like, that's what sales is, in my opinion. Like, I'm not a hard car salesman. That's why I transitioned out of sales. Like, it's literally like, you're figuring out what is their problem, and like, you're just bridging the gap between the product to solve it. Like, what is the
Mhm.
feature that's going to solve, their high abandonment rate, or connectivity issues that they're having with their customers? Like, how are you going to solve it? And so I always use that approach, like, just making sure that It's always value-based conversations. And again, like the big thing that you talked about was time. Like for a lot of people, they don't realize like they think in a silo, like I'm a customer success manager. I need to set up meetings. They just need to set up like weekly meetings with me. Like keep in mind, like every company probably has like 10 other products and 10 other CSMs, like all trying to do the same thing. So it's like, how are you going to stand out? And so like, I'm very big on um, being valuable whenever I get in front of people. Like I'm not just getting in there just to tell them, hey, let's check in. Let's just, what's going on? How's the weather? Like, if we don't need to talk about anything, like, hey, like, let me know, like, is there anything, major on your radar? Like, I don't have anything to cover. Like, sometimes I'll hear, there's XYZ is happening. There's some layoffs coming. We need to tighten our budget or something like that when I ask those questions. And then a lot of them just appreciate the fact that I'm valuing their time so that when I do reach out to them for an ask, they're more inclined to actually answer and respond versus feeling like I'm just trying to sell them the next thing or just trying to do this because this checks off the box for me. Like I'm a great employee and maybe like not at the same time because like I'm not going to do anything that is detrimental to the relationship of the customer, even if it's at the detriment of like me getting a higher payout. But at
Mm.
the end of the day, it ends up working out in the betterment for the organization and the customer because like I'm treating my role and my responsibility as what it should be, is that trusted advisor, really making sure that I'm providing them the best recommendations and understanding like what the timings are.
And I think ultimately, I think there's something that I think you don't get to see a lot of in many of these roles because maybe people just don't feel empowered. Is that I would imagine that if your CEO was also in the same situation, they would do
Yeah.
the same thing. People like to see our agency in other people,
Mhm.
even if you don't have all the power to make the decisions.
Yeah.
But even acting powerful, for
Mm.
example, it's like, you know what, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that, but let me go back and see what we can do.
For
Right.
sure.
I think, or you know what, maybe some high level skeletal, like, I don't know that we do discounts that deep or we can do XYZ that way that you said it.
Mhm.
But I know that there might be a way rather than like, and maybe it's not just sales because maybe it's not just customer success because, of
Mhm.
course, you probably be more flexible, but people just like to see that. And if it doesn't work out, it's not necessarily like the solution, but like, were you willing to actually do something? Were you willing to go
Yeah.
above and beyond? And when people talk to people who are, who empower them and are empowered
Mhm.
like that, I think it also makes a difference.
It does 100% because it's like you build social capital, like whether it's with your customer or internally. It's like it's it's a actually a negotiation technique called anchoring. So like you kind of set the stage like, hey, this is probably not gonna happen, but let me try to see what I can do. Let me try to like I'm gonna put my best foot forward. So at least you've managed expectations. So they're expecting that this isn't gonna work. So if it does work, you like a superstar. If it doesn't, like you're neutral. Like they don't think any versus like a lot of people like to, just always say yes to the customer or over promise and under deliver. Like I'm the complete opposite. Like I'm gonna downplay stuff as much as possible so that I can really wow them and give them an amazing experience. Like I don't want them to feel like they're getting shortchange in any interaction they're having with me.
Yeah. So anyway, we're coming up to the end of the podcast. We got about 15 more minutes
Sure.
of Chris with us. So if you have any questions about customer success management, leadership, public speaking, whatever, is in his wheelhouse, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer. I have two more questions of my own. So any questions that you have, please leave them in the chat. One of the things that you talked about at the top, was like you've been in leadership, and
Mhm.
but whether it's leading from the top or leading from the middle or leading from behind, and I see that that's something that you care about very passionately.
Yeah.
Why does leadership figure for you so much, and how do you think you've been able to leverage that ability in your career so far?
Yeah, for me, I've had various levels of leadership. I've had good leaders and I've had challenging leaders. And for me, realizing how critical it is to the trajectory of someone's career. Like I had a situation where In a previous role, I'm a sales leader. There's another sales leader, and so there was this individual that came in fresh out of college, like just moldable. She has all the potential in the world, and ended up going to this individual's team, um, and completely demoralized her. Like she was ready to resign. I was talking to her on the side and just having conversations, and I honestly, I went out and I asked my leader. I was like, hey, like, can she come over to my team? I feel like I'll just be able to help her out. And working with her, she ended up going from being last on this person's team to being my number one salesperson.
Mm.
Like it's that moment, and it's the realizing that like every interaction that you have can affect someone's life for the good or the bad. Like this person's
Mm.
life especially being in tech, like tech can completely change families' lives, like the opportunities that are here. And so that's why I'm always stepping up to be a mentor. Or if there's new individuals at the organization, especially Black professionals, like I'm trying to step in and say, hey, like I'm here. Like I have really tough skin. Like I've dealt with a lot of challenges. I can deal with it. Everyone can.
Mm.
We're trying to be the bridge or the gap to be able to help them hopefully get through the difficult time. Because the thing is just the difficult time is just a moment. And if you can get
That's
through the
true.
moment, you're gonna realize like there's so much more on the other side. And it a lot of the times it's set up for them to fail. And
Mm.
so for me as a leader, it's my job to help, help them see their potential, help bring that out of them, help them realize that there's a path forward. Like I know when I was a leader, when I had my sales team, my first conversation with them is it's not about what you can do for me. Like, what do you want to do in your career? Like, what can I do for you? Like it says servant leadership. And
Mm.
me going to bat for them mean like my team would ride or die for me.
Mm.
They would go work extra hours, do additional things, like just help out in so many different ways because I would go to bat for them. And I think just being able to see so many amazing leaders, and then as well being able to go through the challenges of having difficult leaders, or I would say more managers than leaders. Um,
Mm.
it can completely derail someone's career. And so I take it very seriously when I see poor leadership, and I try to provide opportunities where I can help correct things, or just again fill the void, fill the gap. Um, yeah, that's probably the main thing. It's just
Yeah.
using it's people's lives in jeopardy.
Mm. That's very key. And I think like we're constantly in the loop. Like we're new ourselves, then we gain some experience, then of course at the end of the careers we go up, and that cycle is always moving. And I think leadership is kind of like that thing that ties it all together. And
For
like
sure.
understanding the power of it, kind of like you said, can make or break lives and careers, and even potential.
Yeah, like as a leader, like it's a like you need to take on the task of like your team shouldn't feel the pain of what's actually going on. Like you should be able to just clear the path and like make things ideally as best of an environment as you can. And like as a leader, like that's what you really get paid for. It's like the strategy. It's like when stuff hits the fan, like how are you going to be able to navigate like the challenging times without like
Mm.
your crew feeling that like
Mm.
there's holes in your ship, the boat is rocking, the storm is going crazy. Like how do you make
Mm.
them really keep working through like the difficult times?
Amazing. So, final question before we go to the audience question by
Mhm.
Jason in the chat is, AI is something that you're really excited about right now.
Sure.
Can you talk me through like what you see in terms of your potential for AI to shift, the industry in CSM?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different use cases that you could use as a CSM. Like my initial use case was actually figuring out I get 30 customers. How am I going to figure out how I know these customers in and out? So I went through creating a prompt in ChatGPT. Actually, I used Gemini so it could actually pull from the internet to get up to date information. And so put this prompt together to do uh, a research on like what does this customer do, how do they make money, what products do they sell, uh, do a analysis of their most recent earnings report. And so what would take me 3 hours, 4 hours per customer, I literally had in my hands in about 2 minutes. And
Mm,
it saves so much time to be able to give me a starting point to really understand the customer. And so, like, I'm working across all industries: banking, financial services, retail, healthcare. Like, I can't be an expert at all these industries. So, like, being able to use that prompt to hopefully give me a little bit of a leg up and understanding of like their business specifically, so that I speak more confidently around their language and able to communicate
mm,
with them on their level. um, but I mean, from you can use it in your CRM. There's so many things from, you know, putting AI behind like what websites are they using, like being able to track what articles are they clicking on, and understanding just where are they at in their journey to be able to provide insights and service that up, or working with uh, working with customers to be able to provide um, like one to many like content. Like AI
mm,
is one of the best things, especially as a CSM, is like creating content. Like, there's some CSMs that have 100 customers. Like, you're not having one-on-one conversation with all those individuals. So using AI, using ChatGPT to be able to create relevant, valuable content that you can send out to the masses. And then
mm,
ideally, hopefully that's sparking some conversations and sparking them, buying some products. So those are
mm.
probably the two most immediate, but I mean, the list is long of different use cases, and of course, pairing that with different other technologies in your tech stack, it can definitely just save a lot of time and honestly just empower the insights that you get to be able to speak more confidently to your customer.
That is that is dope. I think I particularly really like that CRM because I think that, of course, chatbots are how we're experiencing
Mhm.
AI, but I think we'll see it in more native applications,
Yeah.
some really, really like interesting and dynamic use cases. I think it's already happening, but I
Hmm.
think over the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see it at scale for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, first question from Jason: how different is CSM from other sales roles?
Uh there's a lot of sales roles. I think the most immediate between, let's say, an account executive was what most people hear about, which is typically a sales role, and then customer success manager. The main difference is like where are you coming in with the customer in their life cycle. So account executives, they're pre-sales, so they're selling the initial contract. Customer success management is post-sales, where they've already bought the contract and I'm managing the relationship, ideally upsells, expansions, all of that. The account executive might still come back in depending on your organization, but primarily they're focused on bringing in new logos, new business, and new deals. So that's kind of the difference. And then quotas, like a lot of all account executives are going to have a quota. Some CSMs do. I personally have not had a quota. We'll have like a book of business that we have. Like, so if I start with $14 million that I'm managing, I need to make sure that at least at the end of the year I have $14 million. Like, there's no leakage of revenue. So that's primarily the some of the main differences. Just kind of where they're at in the customer life cycle.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And the second question is, what's your advice for becoming a better public speaker?
It's a good one. The funny thing is honestly just getting out there and doing it. It sounds super simple. Everyone is a speaker.
Hmm.
It's just the fact that everyone might not be a good speaker. And like you don't get it without practice. Like, you're not just gonna wake up and you're presenting on stage like Steve Jobs. Like, so for me, I actually signed up to do Toastmasters. I've been doing Toastmasters for about a year now.
Hmm.
And it's forcing me to figure out how to communicate, and I'm writing speeches. I do a lot of podcasts. Been going back to colleges and universities and doing speeches, and so it's all around you. um so like one of the things with Toastmasters is like figure out the ways that you want to improve as a speaker. when I first got started, I was an introvert, and so I get nervous, and so you would have a lot of filler words where you're like, so. And so one thing that they teach you in Toastmasters is counting your filler words. And so when you start counting your filler words, then you'll be mid conversation. You'll start realizing how many times you say like, so, and then once you start tracking it and keeping it in mind, you start improving it. And so a lot of the times is that. And then for me, it's self reflection. Like I know when I go through interview processes or if I'm in, a sales call or I'm working with a customer, like I'll typically spend like 10 to 15 minutes and just kind of debrief like did I do what I needed to do? Like did we achieve the goal that we were trying to? And if not, like what could I have done better? Like could I have said this differently? Could I have framed this a little bit better to make it more easy to digest? So it's a lot of self-reflection and just literally just practice and execution. It's
Mm.
literally just repetition. Just improving as a public speaker.
Yeah, and that hits close to home for me because it's something that I've been working on. I was actually, part of a Toastmasters, dropped out, but I'm trying to, once I'm done with my
Always
MBA,
drop back in.
definitely want to go back.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like, we all can recognize. I think it's almost like sales too.
Mhm.
Someone said something in the sales book I read. He said, uh, "Everyone loves to buy, but no one likes to be sold."
Yeah, 100%.
And I think speaking and public speaking is the same. It's that
Mhm.
we probably don't like to listen to speeches. Like it's not our favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
But when we hear a really good one,
Uh-huh. We're
we're
captured
captivated by it.
and motivated.
Um, the difference is that it's not always easy or obvious that
Mhm.
this is one, the easy one, or this is two, how to get there.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we're talking all the time. It's hard to, in fact, like that's the thing. First of all, like you see a lot of people cringe when they hear their own
Mhm.
voices, right? Because it's just one of those facts of life.
For
But I
sure.
think you've hit it on the head. I think the first thing is that consciousness because you will get irritated when you hear how many times you use filler words. And that's something that's always been there, but you never even paid attention to it. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good one. What other things would you say has helped you in your journey to becoming a better public speaker?
Honestly, like saying yes. Like really
Uh,
I was an introvert. Like I was not looking to be a public speaker. So fun fact about me, I actually taught myself how to cut hair. I've been a barber for 10 years. Um, and so that's how I made money in college. So that was my introduction into public speaking. Like I'm cutting hair, like you don't want to be cutting someone's hair for 30, 45 minutes and like you're just sitting there silent. So like it forced me to have to, figure it out. Um, and there's actually one specific situation that happened while I was cutting hair that like literally completely it lit the fire in me to be a public speaker. Um, my boy Jamal, we were in college, and so I was cutting his hair, and I was really taking my time. We were just chilling, talking. Like I'm talking for like an hour and a half, like, and I'm talking majority of the time. We were talking about some random topic, and there was we had a men's like mentoring group in college. Like literally like 2 days later, we get in the group. It's like 50 people or so in a room, and we talk about the same exact topic that me and him talked about. I get in there, I don't say anything. And literally, he came up to me maybe like another day later, and he's like, "Bro, you were selfish." He's like, "I just wanted to let you know." He's like, "I literally sat with you, and you were putting me on game to so many things for literally an hour and a half, and like you literally sat in that room and didn't say anything. You never realized like who you could have impacted by just sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas." And so, like for me, like that's what kind of triggered it was understanding like the impact that I'm able to have is bigger than the fear that I might have of public speaking of like, are people going to think I'm stupid of like what I say? Like, am I going to stutter? Like whatever the things might be. So like kind of leaning into that. And so, really it's going through the process, like put yourself in uncomfortable situations. So like,
mm,
I seen one guy. He's like, he wanted to get more comfortable, like talking to strangers. So literally, he'll go out in New York. and talk to 5 strangers? People are going to say no, like, but he's not going to stop until he talks to 5 strangers and has like a 1 to 2 minute conversation. So like it's little
Wow.
things like you can just do on a day-to-day basis, even if you're at home, like with your partner, with your friends or whatever have you. Like if you typically get super long-winded and are very verbose, like now you're having a conversation, like figure out how to tell a concise story. Like that's the thing that you're going to focus on.
Mm.
Focus on telling concise stories for a week, and then you're going to get better at it. And then maybe it's your filler words and focus on that for a day, a week, and just like pick one thing, 1 to 2 things. Like there's so many things to be a public speaker. Just find the first one or the easiest one that's going to build some confidence, and just go.
And I think you shared both a public speaker hack and a tech hack, right?
For sure.
Pick one thing, get better, and then go again. Yeah, I feel like that's a really good place to hang it tonight. But before we go, I don't know if you have any books, podcasts, movies coming out that you want to shout out. This is the moment.
Not yet. I definitely do some public speaking, but I do have a speaking engagement coming up at NC State here in Raleigh, coming up in November. So I'm looking forward to that, but nothing too major. Just connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, I'm always an open book. For me, I always want to figure out whatever I can do to help others get into tech. I know Bobby says he hates breaking into tech. Um, how we can get more people here because we belong here, and whatever value I can do to be able to help them along the way or ease their journey so they don't have as many bumps and bruises as I might have. Like, yeah, I'm more than happy to. So, yeah, I appreciate the
Yeah,
conversation, Jawan. This is amazing.
yeah, I really appreciate you, Chris. This has been an amazing episode of the podcast. Thanks everyone for rocking with us. We're gonna be back again. I'm not sure if we have one tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, next week with some other amazing guests talking about